What is the definition of faith? Let's take our Bible out and turn it to Hebrews 11:3. It quotes, "By faith we understand that the universe was transformed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible." Another way is by saying the meaning of faith, which is by trusting God at all times. You will either be controlled by the faith that you have in God, or you'll be controlled by fear and worry, which is what the devil wants you to be controlled by all the time. According to the Bible, we are to walk by faith, not by sight. Our faith is supposed to be our sight of believing in things that we can't see in the spiritual realm. In the spiritual realm, God is constantly at work by doing miracles to working on people's hearts. No matter what if we are facing good times or bad times, God is in control, sitting on His throne, looking down onto the earth. Faith is essential for a Christian's life. In fact, we need it every day in our daily lives. Romans 14:23 says, "But the man who has doubts is condemned if he eats, because his eating is not from faith, and everything that does not come from faith is sin." The way we can stop having doubts is by trusting God, because He will deliver us from having doubts in our minds by replacing them with spiritual thoughts. Galatians 3:11 quotes, "Query, no one is justified before God by the law, because the righteous will live by faith." Face it, we broke some or many of His laws, but need to ask for forgiveness and turn away from our wicked ways and have our focus on the Lord. All of the things that we have came from God, because He is my source of asking for things that I need, such as water, food, a house, and etc., instead of the world. Luke 17:11 through 14 is talking about the 10 people that had leprosy. During Jesus' days, when a person had leprosy, they would be kicked out of the city that they lived in and be an outcaster. They would stay that way until they got healed from the disease. Jesus healed the people that had leprosy, even though they still had the disease, but it was by their faith that they had in Jesus that got them healed. They went to the priest as Jesus commanded them to, and became from being an outcaster to a normal person living in the city. There are 3 elements of faith. The first one is interlocutor faith, which is where you believe that God will do it. The second one is emotional faith, is where you are saying, I want you to do it. Finally, vocational faith is where you believe God is doing it now. His timing is always on time. Become the man or woman of faith that God has called you to be. Most importantly, practice what you have preached and live it. A couple of examples of where people use their faith in the Bible would be Abraham and his son Isaac. That Abraham and Isaac was going on a mountain to make a sacrifice, and they just about got to the top of the mountain, and then Isaac said, Dad, where is the lamb that we are to sacrifice? And then God spoke to them, and he said that he will provide the lamb for the sacrifice. And that was foreshadowing that Jesus is the lamb to die on the cross for our sins that we commit every day. And then the other example of faith is where the people was going to the promised land, that they was in the wilderness for 40 years. The first leader was Moses, and Moses was going to get to see the promised land, but he was not able to, because he himself disobeyed God. And that God said that he would let him see the promised land from a mountain that is nearby. But he himself could not enter it. And Moses dies later on in the book of Deuteronomy, and that then God finds another person to replace Moses, and that person would be Joshua. That when we start on up the adventure for the people, and just like Olympian in a relay race with the baton, one person would start it and they would pass the baton to the other person. And that's what God had done by passing on the baton to Joshua. And during his first month of leading the people, God said to him 3 times to be strong and courageous. And by that, he was meaning that God himself will give him the strength and his people to defeat the people that was on the promised land that God himself had given them, and they would conquer the promised land that God had gave them, and that they would have to be committed to obeying God's commands at the time, which would be the 10 Commandments that Moses had written, and that they was to meditate on it